If you have a goal of shrinking your yarn stash, but never feel like you make any progress and also can't find yarn in your stash that you actually want to use, you're not alone. I'm going to help you break it down so you can identify which yarn should stay and which should go. I'm Becca. You know my story. I've been knitting for 25 years, and over those years, I've accumulated quite a bit of yarn, gone on prolonged yarn buying fast, destashed a bunch, and yet I still have more yarn than I would like. As I've talked about in previous videos, a few years ago, I went through a giant purge where I did the whole Marie Kondo system to basically my entire house. And that was very helpful to me in narrowing down what I actually like, what my favorite colors are, what my style is, and all of that stuff. So if you've never done that, I would highly suggest that you take some time to go through your other belongings that are not yarn before you go through your yarn. That will make this much easier because you'll be better in touch with what kinds of things you actually prefer. My favorite color is what I like to describe as blue, green, and everything in between. If I had to narrow it down to one specific color, it would definitely be turquoise. First, get your floor nice and clean. You don't want your yarn getting all dusty and hairy. Then we're going to dump out all your yarn on the floor. If you don't have designated places for your yarn or you tend to hide it around random parts of the house, go get it. Get it all. Pile it all up. Pile it all up. Make sure you find all of it. How did that feel? Overwhelming? Satisfying? Whew. Looks like a lot more now that I dumped it out. Get a container or box of some sort that will be a designated rejects container. So as we eliminate, we're just going to toss all of the ones that are not keepers, just toss them to the side into the box or container or whatever. Now I'm going to divide them all into colors in the Roy G. Biv order. So that's red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, and then white, black, gray, brown, and multicolored. I know it's a lot, but I promise you can do it. That was really fun. This is beautiful, but I'm seeing some themes here. I actually see a lot of reds and pinks, which is interesting because you might think based on that I love them, but actually the reason I have so many is because they're not the colors that I choose very often. So they've kind of just accumulated. I do see a lot of blues and greens, and as I said before, those are my favorite, so I tend to just accumulate a lot of those. But what I can gather from that is that I probably don't need any more for a while. This is actually kind of overwhelming. Now that it's all out in the open, we are going to pick out the colors that don't fit into our household color scheme and toss them out. Don't overthink it. When I went through my wardrobe and I narrowed it down, the colors that I eliminated were red and purple. And I also realized that wearing gray makes me sad. You may be the opposite of me. You may hate bright, loud colors and love soft earth tones. Don't forget about your family. I have one daughter that really, really loves green, another one that kind of likes pink, but she's one that prefers more soft muted tones. And then my son also likes green and blue. So that's easy. My husband doesn't really care. So anything that I'm going to make for him is going to coordinate with the rest of us. Really quick, I'm just going to get rid of all of the loud pinks, the purples, and the reds. Okay, now that that is done, this is more appealing to me. I'm thinking about my daughter who sometimes does like gray, but I see a yarn in here. This one I actually didn't enjoy working with when I made something out of it because I don't like the texture of the yarn. It's not my favorite. So I'm gonna kiss that one goodbye. This color I don't really love that much. I bought this when I was in a phase of life that I was trying to simplify, and I thought that wearing earth tones would make my life easier, but like I said before, it just ended up making me feel kind of sad. I honestly am not a fan of variegated yarn, and there's not much of it left, so that one can go. Now that we've narrowed it down by color, we're going to just touch them all, and if when you touch them, it doesn't spark joy, it's gonna go into the bin. What I mean by that is if you don't like the way it feels, you're not going to like knitting with it. So you're not going to choose it when you're making something. You might as well just get rid of it. I came across a few that I always think about getting rid of, but I never do because they're really pretty. They're not soft. I don't like the way they feel. They fray a lot, but they just seem like they would be so much fun to use. I bought them at a local yarn store that was going out of business and everything was on sale. A pitfall for me. Sometimes it's good to have a little fun yarn that you find inspiring, but once you get rid of all the stuff that does not inspire you, you'll have more room to be inspired by things like this and to choose projects that it will work for. So I'm going to keep these. Now that we have felt everything up, we are going to look at them based on weight. So, what I want you to think about now is everything you've ever knitted. Your favorites, your not so favorites, and what types of things that you've liked knitting with certain kinds of weights. I got this when my brother was getting married and my soon to be sister in law was planning the wedding decorations and she wanted some handmade doilies and she asked me if I would knit one, which I found out real quick that there's a reason why most doilies are crocheted. It took me forever to make just one doily. And so that's what this is from. They've been married for 10 years now. The only thing I've used this for is cutting cinnamon rolls on Christmas Day. So I don't think that's super necessary. I'm actually gonna get rid of this. Look at me, progress, guys. If there is a weight that maybe you used to use a lot and you've decided now that you've knitted more that you don't prefer it, go ahead and eliminate that. So some knitters tend to prefer finer yarns and some prefer thicker, more quickly gratifying yarns. So whatever it is that you don't prefer, just grab all of those and throw it out. So think on the ends of the spectrum. If you enjoy finer yarns, you can get rid of bulky and super bulky. If you enjoy thick yarns, you could probably get rid of fingering and lace weight. Bear in mind though that you can knit with multiple strands held together. Um, it's just whatever you like. If you like either really fine or really thick, but not the medium weight ones, then you can get rid of your DK worsted and Aran weight. So, just whatever. Now I want you to think about the things that you want to knit in the near future. I keep my wish list in a Ravelry queue. You do you, it's whatever you want. Do you see any yarns in your stash that will work for that project? If not, what's the problem? Is it that you don't have the right weight, the right color, the right type of fibers, the right amount? It could be anything. So I just want you to think about that because if you find yourself in the middle of a yarn store, then you'll have a better idea of what you actually want to be buying. Looking at my queue, I see a sweater that is knitted with a bunch of different weight strands held together. I probably haven't knitted that because I don't have enough of any given one of those yarns. Sweater here that calls for Aran weight, but it's a child size. And then this one I'm not too sure about. I see another sweater that wants me to use some mohair lace weight and some light fingering weight. So I've got a lot of sweaters that I've saved that use lighter weight yarns but need larger quantities. So looking at my stash then, The only yarn I have a sweater quantity of in one color is this pink yarn. I bought this in September. It is March 4th on the day of recording this. I got this for my daughter for a specific sweater that I had saved because she thought a nice soft pink would be good. And I picked this out. I got this lace weight mohair to strand along with it so it would have a nice halo. And by the time I finished the other two sweaters in my queue, it was January. And she says to me, I'm not really into pink anymore. So that's when I learned not to buy yarn for a project too far in the future. So there's that. I actually do like this color of pink, even though I'm not a real pink person, because I think that it would pair really well with this yellow and even some gray, maybe some off-white. I think it would even look good with like a greenish blue. So these I'm keeping because they tie really well into my overall color scheme. So I want you to think of your yarn stash kind of like a capsule wardrobe. Now, I don't do a strict capsule wardrobe, but I identified my colors. My colors are turquoise, olive green, denim, and then I like to accent with corals. Thinking about my yarn stash the same way, I want any given color to work with several other colors that I have in the stash. That way, when I'm running low on a large quantity of a certain yarn, I have smaller bits of multiple colors that can be used together, whether it's a striped or a fair isle or whatever. They can work together. I'm not saying you have to have a specific plan for every bit of yarn in your stash, but what I'm saying is that your yarn should support your knitting, the things that you like knitting, the things that you enjoy once you're done knitting them. And if it doesn't, get it the heck out of your house. Before you put it away, I want you to take some time to update your Ravelry stash if you use that. If you already use the stash section of your Ravelry notebook, go through it and change the status of all of the yarns that didn't make the cut. You can either change it to traded, sold, gifted, or will trade or sell. For the ones you're keeping, make sure that the yardage is up to date. This will make shopping from your stash much easier because you won't have to dig through it to see what you have. And also, if you find yourself in the middle of a yarn store feeling very tempted, you will be able to pull up your stash digitally on your smartphone and see what you already have and identify the gaps that are in your stash. If you do need to buy more yarn, that it will fill that gap and not be redundant. This is very important. You have to actually get rid of the rejects. I don't want you to let them hang out in your house for months. I've been guilty of this at times, and it makes me feel guilty, it makes me feel stressed, so I want you to get rid of it. You can donate it or you can sell it. Um, if you want to sell it, if you have some that you think are a high quality and that you could maybe make some money to buy better yarn choices, then I'm all for that. A site that I like to use to sell things from around my house is Mercari. I don't know how you pronounce it, but I like it. I've had a lot of success with it. To donate, obviously, there are thrift stores. That's probably the easiest way to get rid of it. You could also offer it up to your local yarn group, see if anybody wants it. You could check and see if there are any domestic violence shelters in your area and ask them if they're taking donations for this type of thing. I know trading is really popular, but I want to caution you against trading yarn because the reason you're doing this in the first place is because you had too much yarn. And trading it for more is going to defeat the purpose. Plus, I find that when people get things for free, they tend to allow things to enter their home that they wouldn't if you had to pay money for it. So I want you just before you accept any trades, ask yourself, If I had to pay money for this, would I still want it? And if the answer is no, just stop it. Stop it. If you didn't notice, I have a lot of memories tied to where and when I bought certain yarns. Um, but just quickly going through it like that kind of helps you to realize that they're really not that important to you. And the fact is, even if I get rid of these yarns, I still have those memories. This yarn I bought in Santa Fe. My brother used to live in Albuquerque, and one spring break, my husband was a full time substitute teacher at the time. And so he had spring break off, and we drove down to Albuquerque to visit my brother, and they wanted to go snowboarding at Ski Santa Fe. And I was very pregnant with my first child, so I couldn't snowboard. But I had a really great time just wandering around Old Town Santa Fe by myself and with my baby in my belly. And I found a really cool local yarn store there where I bought this yarn. I had a purple streak in my hair at the time, so I felt drawn to purple things. But I really just don't like the colors of these. It's just a really cool yarn. It was made locally in New Mexico. It's made out of corn silk and merino. I thought that was really awesome. I've known for a while that I needed to get rid of it, but every time I look at it, I think about that wonderful day and how much fun I had. It was kind of my last big outing to explore a new place before I had kids. I'm gonna cry. I'll always have the memory. So if you feel a little emotional about the yarns you're getting rid of, it's totally fine. But please don't let that stop you. The freedom that you'll feel after you let go of the extras is worth the pain of the actual letting go. If you do this process, I would love it if you share it with me. If you post it on social media, you can tag me. My handle is at beccaj.norman on Instagram and Facebook. I don't use Snapchat, Twitter, or TikTok. If you're having a hard time, just go ahead and reach out to me. Send me a DM, send me an email. I would absolutely love to hear from you and support you in this process of letting go.